What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Boozers Basketball Podcast. I'm here with a very happy individual, my main man and co-host, Vanik Panosian, rocking his Houston Rockets jersey. So we'll get right into it because this is a recap of the NBA draft. And right from the get-go, there were a lot of surprises. We talked about this earlier, Vanik, that the Rockets were going to get Paulo Banchero. That's not what went down. So, what were you thinking when Orlando decided to switch course at the last minute and take Banchero? And really, Houston's sort of plan was disrupted.
I was pretty glued to my phone all day yesterday. And so I don't know what happened that last hour, but once the leaks started coming out that Paolo might be going first, and the more and more um, internet stuff that I was seeing was going on, the bigger a reality it became. And then once they actually made the selection, I mean, I was shocked because I thought Jabari at 1, Chet at 2, and Paolo at 3 was pretty locked in. I think I just was so emotionally vested with Paolo that, like I said, just not hearing his name go to Orlando just put me in shock.
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
I really like Paolo, but I think Jabari might have a higher ceiling personally. So I think it's a good consolation prize. I would have been really worried if the Rockets took Chet. So I think you guys dodged a bullet there. But let's talk a little bit about Jabari. How do you think he fits in with what the Rockets are trying to do to kind of get back into a section of the Western Conference where they can start competing again?
Oh, I mean, if you're just talking fit, I think he is the better fit. The guy's 19 years old, elite level kind of shooting for his size. I think he's going to be paired up with Jalen Green. We're going to have just run and gun fun cohesion. And I mean, the tape that you watch on the guy, it's just crazy. It's crazy. I mean, his frame really does look like a Kevin Durant, and his shooting style from 3 at that size looks very Kevin Durant. So if I can get any type of comparison to that guy, I'm very, very happy. He's also, because of his size and his foot speed, I mean, he's another guy that can defend at pretty much any position. So he gives us a lot of flexibility. And again, where I said the Rockets lack defensively, he's going to help. So super, super excited about him.
That's great to hear. And the good thing about this draft from a Rockets perspective is they had multiple first round picks to really clean up and start really building out this roster. So tell me about what you think about Terry Eason and Ty Ty Washington Jr., who are headed to Houston next year as well.
Yeah, Eason was what we talked about in our previous podcast, so that worked out perfectly. I kind of got excited a little bit because before we took Eason, because Mark Williams and AJ Griffin were falling, but once I knew that they were out of the picture, Eason was originally like the target anyway. The dude is, like we said in the previous podcast, he's a taller and younger, and looks like a better version of what Jayshawn Tate kind of brings to the team. Very, very defensive minded, high motor, long arms, plays passing lanes. So we need that type of a player on that team. And then offensively, again, because the guy's so young still, we don't know. Like, that's an area of opportunity for him. Plus, I know that one of the big knocks on him is drawing fouls, but I think that's just because he plays such risky and high energy defense that that's something that he's going to kind of have to hone in.
100%. I mean, if you look at what the Rockets have done over the last 2 drafts, I mean, they got Jalen Green, they got Sengun, they got Jabari Smith, and they got Terry Eason. That could be like 4/5 of your starting lineup.
Yeah.
How do you think about that? Like, that's pretty impressive in 2 drafts.
Yes. And I'm still not counting out Josh Christopher, and we got Usman Garuba, who was, one of the best players on Spain's national team. And he spent last year basically in the G League, and I think this year we're going to see a lot more of him. And then Josh Christopher, he definitely had some glimpses last year of explosiveness. We got a ton of young guys. Literally, I think I saw one of the comments said the Eason he only played 2 years of college, and of all the draft picks we've taken in the last 2 seasons, he's older than everybody. So I mean, that's how young the Rockets are. My concern there is just making sure that we keep somebody or acquires. I mean, right now we've got Eric Gordon, but you can't have a team of just 19-year-olds kind of running themselves. You got to have, like, just for Amir, I'll say, the Udonis Haslam, on the Miami Heat style.
Right.
You got guys to show the young guys, the work ethic, how to win, professionalism, handling the media, all that kind of stuff. So right now, Eric Gordon's in talks for getting traded too. So I just hope we kind of round out the roster a little bit with some people that are going to help these young kids develop.
100%. And to your point, how would you rate Houston's coach in terms of having the ability to actually be that leader that this team needs, like a veteran presence that kind of shows them the way?
Steven Silas is, he's a young up and coming coach. He's well respected. He, like any coach in the NBA, is just always in one of those hot seats. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're probably Steve Kerr right now, I think every coach on any given losing streak in the NBA gets nervous. But I like Silas. I also, like, having under his belt two of the worst record in the league 2 seasons in a row, obviously not great. I mean, the guy took over a job when he thought he was going to be coaching Harden and Westbrook, and literally 5 games into the season, Harden's traded and he's now all of a sudden part of a complete rebuild. So I think coaches that are, first time head coaches coming into a situation that he got handed to him, I think he's done a good job, and I just don't feel like it's really a fair shake to be like, oh, well, he's responsible for all this losing. I mean, the guy is part of a rebuild, so you just got to kind of look at it from a different lens.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you bring up. But one thing I will say about Houston, I think given the way that they are approaching this rebuild, I actually think they're going to have a lot of rope for Steven Silas. They clearly understood that they were starting from scratch. They're trying to get rid of everything. And they picked a first-time head coach. So you can't just expect a first-time head coach to come in and turn you into a contender overnight. So they were saying, we're going to get a lot of young players. We'll bring in a first-time coach. We like his resume. We like his peripherals. We think he can actually be someone that can help turn this franchise around. So I think they will be patient with Steven Silas. And I actually think the Rockets will be a very interesting team to watch in the West. You expect a couple of teams to take drops. And who knows, maybe you can work your way into a play-in spot. Or, I mean, I think by next year, this team should be thinking about at least a play-in spot as a reasonable goal to get to.
Yeah, I agree. I think Rockets probably have one more year of, like, trying to get in on the top 3-ish pick. Next year's draft is going to be loaded at, like, the top 4 positions. I know Scoot is part of the draft, and then the big dog that everybody wants is Victor Wembanyama, who I think we haven't had a prospect like him in terms of everybody being interested at the 1 spot since, like, a LeBron James. So us again not taking somebody like Chet, if we somehow manage to pull off a number 1 pick and get Victor at the center position, and then you get Sengun at forward, maybe try to play Jabari at small forward, Green, and then if Porter works out, I mean, that is a lethal starting 5 with 3 top 3 lottery picks. So but yeah, I mean, winning at this point is going to be the goal, but the Rockets are doing it the right way. I think every GM perspective, I'm happy with Stone, since Morey left. The worst thing that you can do when you're like a team that goes from competing like with the Harden era is to be just kind of mediocre and in the middle of the pack. Right. If you're going to be bad and you're going rebuild, it's just better to be bad. And Rockets are, they have all these first round picks. They got all these assets from the Nets too, obviously, with the Harden trade. And then the big thing is, after this season, the Rockets are going to have complete open cap space. They're going to have all their rookies on deals, but Eric Gordon's coming off the books, and then the big one is John Wall.
Yeah, what's going to happen to John Wall? That's something to talk about. That deserves like its own discussion.
Yeah. So
so 3 first-round picks for the Rockets. You like what they did. Glad to hear it. Let's switch gears a little bit. So on the other side of the coin, when it comes to Jabari Smith going 3, we got to talk a little bit about what Banchero to the Magic means. So the Magic have had some really great history when it comes to drafting number one overall picks. Is there any shot that Banchero can be as good as like a Shaq or a Dwight Howard type big man? Or, I mean, he's not really a big, but someone that has that presence that can really set this franchise in a totally new direction that no one saw coming.
I absolutely think he has the ability. I think, I mean, Shaq is in his own category. Even Dwight, man, Orlando Dwight, those guys. I mean, physically, not that um, Paolo's that far off. I think his game's just a little bit more different, right? Like
Right,
Shaq,
100%.
Shaq and Dwight dominate in the paint. Paolo is a three-level scorer, and it's just crazy because he's a three-level scorer and he's that big. But I think he's gonna. We said it in the last podcast. I think he's gonna be the rookie of the year, and I think it's great for the Magic. He's gonna be a great fit. It's a need that that they had needed on that team. And then with having Franz Wagner and what he showed last season, I mean, their roster is really coming together too.
Do you think Paolo can be a 25 point per game scorer in the league and be like a number one? Or is he more of a number two? Because for me personally, I think it's a no brainer. This guy's going to put up 20 in the NBA. He has a lot of similarities to Carmelo Anthony. I hesitate to make comparisons. I know you love comparisons, Bonig, but I don't want to call this guy Carmelo Anthony, but I see a lot of resemblances to him. So I'm just thinking, is this guy like a 25 point per game scorer, or is he more like 20, you think?
No, I think this guy can get 25. Like I said, he's big enough, he's strong enough, he can shoot the ball from anywhere. He's got handles to get his shot off. He can drive. I mean, he'll be a 25-point scorer.
Yeah, I mean, Orlando kind of needs that because they've done a good job of accumulating a collection of talent that I wouldn't say can score the ball at an elite rate yet. So they need someone like Paulo to hit in that respect if they want to be a good team. But I can't hate on the pick. They needed scoring. They probably went after who they thought was the best scorer. But I really like Jabari Smith's game. I watched Auburn a lot this year, and I thought he was the best player coming out. And he was held back because of a lack of aggressiveness and because Auburn's point guards did not get him the ball. They tried to play hero ball. And when you're a wing or a big that's not getting the ball when you need it, you can get out of rhythm. But despite that sort of setback, he was still able to have a great year. So I think Houston's getting a great pick.
Yeah, I think it's going to be this pick for Houston is even more of a compliment to Sangoon's game too, because Sangoon is such a high level elite passer as a big, and I think he's going to give Jabari a lot of good looks too from the post. So it's going to be a fun, exciting season to watch. Like I said, hopefully just don't lose as many games as we did last year, and we get to watch some fun, exciting basketball.
All right, so we got to talk a little bit about Chet Holmgren going to the Thunder, which was probably the most predictable thing that happened at the early part of the draft. I think everybody was thinking that Chet was going to go to OKC, and he actually did. So you can answer this question in context to their other picks, because I know they had like 3 picks in the first 13 of the draft overall. But what do you think Chet Holmgren can do in the NBA in the context of his situation with OKC?
I think, I mean, he's going to be an immediate starter, and you got to roll with him at that pick. And again, he's such a unicorn type of player. We don't know, right? We've done all these player comps. We know all the winning he's done and all the rankings he's had from his FIBA basketball days to Gonzaga. And the thing that is known about him is that the dude's a winner. Like, he has won at every level of every team that he's done. And so I think that's one of the things people have banked on as well with him, that, like his pedigree is like has translated at each level of play. So at the NBA level, again, we have all our concerns because of his body frame, but OKC has so many draft picks stockpiled. He's one of the ones that's going to be part of that core though. And we just got to kind of see how he comes out and, hangs with the big boys and handles the muscle and the weight in the post. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing in college. In the NBA, you're going up against a bunch of grown men at every position. It's not just the big man in the paint, but even your point guards and your shooting guards and all those guys are, muscle. So let's see how he holds up.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for me because people have been really praising Chet Holmgren because he's super tough. He doesn't get phased. He's not the type of person that's going to get intimidated and lose his confidence. So you would think someone that's undersized like he would, he gets posterized once or twice and then he kind of just disappears. But people are banking on the fact that that's not the case. So if he is as dynamic offensively, where he can shoot the ball, he can handle, he can create shots, and he doesn't get sort of out of whack because he got dunked on, then there's a path for him to be successful. It remains to be seen because you're going to hear everybody talk about this. You played in the West Coast Conference, you played at Gonzaga, you played nobody. Like the one game that mattered, you played against Duke, and Banchero was the clear NBA sort of star in that game. But I'm willing to see what Chet's got. Like, if he is as tough as people are saying, all this like shit talking, it's going to probably motivate him and make him a better NBA player. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
And one more thing too is like Chet, like in his lone rookie year with Gonzaga, they college basketball offenses are run differently. And even though he's the big name in college basketball, it's not like the NBA where it's just like, hey, that's our star player. We're going to run all these plays through him. I mean, dude, if you were looking just at Gonzaga, you would think that Timmy was the number.
100%. That's a very good point. He actually played within the confines of the system because he knew it was Timmy's team. That was Drew Timmy's team straight away last year. And Chet was like, I'm going to figure out a way to make myself useful the best way that I can. I'm not going to be the type of person that takes over and tries to do everything because I'm trying to get my draft stock up. That there have been instances that's happened in the NBA or in college, but he was like, I'm going to play within Gonzaga's system and I'm going to make it work. So that's a very fair point.
Yeah, so I mean, OKC's not going to do that. OKC's going to give Chet every opportunity to succeed and succeed while failing. You know what I mean? Look at any rookie. I mean, look at Jalen Green. I think Pano said it in the last podcast. Jalen Green started the season off horribly, and then like basically right around All-Star break, I mean, the guy took off. So Chet's going to get that same kind of green light from OKC.
Yeah, you're right. I can't wait to see that because there haven't been many players like Chet that have been drafted. So we talked about on the last podcast about how Sacramento was going to figure out a way to really confuse us. And we're going to be like, what are they going to do with their pick? And they managed to do it by skipping on Jaden Ivey and taking Keegan Murray. So there is a defensible case that could be made. Sacramento has taken guards in the past couple of drafts. They might be guard heavy, but there is a lot of chatter about how good Jaden Ivey is, the fact that he has Ja Morant like qualities, and he was the best player by a wide margin at number 4. So how do you interpret what Sacramento was doing at number 4?
So no knock again on Keegan, man, but the Kings went way too early with position draft rather than best player available draft. And we talked about this again last podcast. I think early on, you have to do best player available. And we suggested in the last podcast that the Kings should trade that pick if they're not taking
with Ivy, right?
Yes. So they should have traded the pick. Clearly, the right trade wasn't out there for them. We heard the rumors about John Collins from Atlanta, all that kind of stuff. Because here's the thing about the Kings: the Kings actually do have talent. They just don't know how to win, and they're not a rebuilding team where it's just like, oh, we've got a bunch of rookies running around. At this point, De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, you've got Harrison Barnes, Rashawn Holmes. You have people that actually have been in the league. They just don't. Again, it's a culture franchise issue. So you don't really want to bring a rookie into the mix because you should already be competing for the play-in or be a 7 or an 8 seed in the playoffs. But they're lingering. So I would, if the trade wasn't there, in my perspective, if I'm the GM for the Kings, I'm taking Ivy. I would take Ivy because De'Aaron Fox we're keeping him. He's our starting point guard. But no knock against Davion Mitchell. He's a very undersized guard.
He would be a good 6-man, Davion Mitchell.
You move Mitchell to 6, or maybe you find the right trade for him. Maybe Mitchell's a trade and you get another pick later on in the first round. You kind of push him off. But I would rather have the backcourt of Ivy and Fox, but the Kings.
Yeah,
the Kings
now Detroit has that sick point guard trio.
They gave Detroit, I mean, literally a Christmas gift yesterday, wrapped in the red ribbon, and said, "Hey, here's Ivy to you guys," because that's what did you see that stat where it showed the pick?
Yes,
the King.
I think I know what you're talking about.
It is insane. It is insane.
It showed those 3 picks and then 3 picks after.
Correct. It's like the Kings pick, and the player that goes after the Kings pick is like elite. I think one of them I know is Luka.
It's Luka, Damian Lillard, and I think Klay Thompson.
Yeah, there you go. That's what it is. Yeah, because Jimmer Fredette. It was Jimmer Fredette.
Oh my God.
So it's just like, it's a good omen to be the pick behind the Kings.
So Jaden Ivey is about to ball with the Pistons, apparently.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that backcourt has potential.
Oh, dude,
I'm going to be checking NBA League Pass to see what's good with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey in the backcourt for sure, 100%.
And then Ivy, like, even if you don't know anything about him, like watching the draft yesterday and the emotion, and he just seems like such a good dude and so likable, and you want him to do well. And you see all the the bravado and all these tough guys and all the jewelry and the bling and all that kind of stuff during the draft, but like he was like all of us, like, you know what I mean? Like if we got drafted, or all of our hopes when we played basketball, and like when we joked around shooting threes and playing, pickup games and all that stuff, like you kind of like felt the realness of like through his tears and all the emotion and being with his mom and the story. So it was awesome to watch just him get picked.
I mean, he's probably the 3rd most likely in this draft class to have the best career, I would say.
Yeah, I'm with it.
It's probably him, Banchero, or Jabari Smith. Those are the top 3. I think that's actually the true tier 1. But maybe Chet Holmgren surprises me. Maybe Chet Holmgren is that good. But I think Jaden Ivey, if he shows a willingness to address certain areas of his game that could use a little bit of refinement, I think he can blow by the person defending him easily. But then once you get to the rim, it's about making the right play. I think during the NBA Finals, we kind of saw this with Tatum, where the decision-making, once he got into the rim, was a little bit questionable. I mean, Jaden Ivey's like 6 years younger than Tatum, or 5 years younger, whatever it may be. He still needs to develop the ability to have good decision-making once he blows by his guy, and then there's a help defender because it's the NBA and he has to make a split-second decision.
Yep.
But
agreed.
There's a lot to like about him.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
The Pistons draft room, I mean, had to be. I wish there was a camera.
Yeah, they must have been ecstatic.
Yep. And so, and hands down, I mean, if we're talking like the Pistons, there's obviously several winners with the draft yesterday, but the Pistons were, top dog with the draft that they had.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So Pistons seem like everybody loved their draft. You mentioned there were maybe a couple other teams who really got better yesterday. Who do you think was one that really surprised you with how well they did on draft day?
I mean, the 3 teams that I'm going with, probably in this order, are Pistons 1, OKC 2, and then Rockets 3.
Gotcha. So with OKC, they made some good moves post Chet. Like they got the 2 Jalen Williams, right?
Yeah, they got Usman, right?
Oh yes, with the Knicks. That caused its own set of
It, it,
feedback on Twitter from New York fans.
does
100%.
does OKC like have a requisite for like their draft picks that they have to be the scrawniest, lankiest guy before they draft them? I mean, they've got like every stick-bodied player on their roster. It cracks me up, but I mean, it is going to be defensively. They're going to be a very, very unique bunch of players out there, and I'm like curious to see as those guys develop. I mean, it's a bunch of like Nicholas Batum type of players at every position. So
Well, the
good luck.
interesting thing with OKC is I think everybody is recognizing that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the best player on that team, but they tank every season. So then when it gets post All-Star break, he just sits out and he doesn't even play games anymore. I don't know
Mhm.
when that trend is going to stop because he
This,
needs to get reps with all these new players that he's playing with if
dude,
this team wants to go anywhere.
let's try let's kind of ballpark guess what the starting five is for the OKC Thunder, because I agree they do this, and I think this is the year they need to stop doing that because they already have the draft capital. Like what reason do you have to tank? And at
I
this
mean, they
point,
just traded the Knicks a whole bunch of picks for someone. I don't really know much about Dang, who they took at 13, I think it was,
yeah.
but they must have liked him a little bit to trade future draft capital to move up to take him, right? So,
Well, I mean, the thing is with the OKC, they have so many picks. Like they actually have to do this. Like inevitably, like probably every season, they kind of need to let some of them go because you just you can't. At it's one thing to rebuild through the draft and have draft picks, but it is also a thing to have too many draft
yeah,
picks
they
because
went overboard by
yeah,
dumping their stars.
yes, because then when you have this amount of talent and you're doing all these picks, you don't have the minutes on the court to allow those people to develop and be the players that they can eventually become. So, if you have like a roster of 13 lottery picks, well, at the end of the day, only like 6, 7, 8 of them are going to get the substantial minutes. So you're going to have that are just
And that's like optimistic, maybe four.
yeah, exactly. So
Because like if they actually hit, then they're gonna require a pretty big contract. Like
correct,
you can't afford to pay six lottery picks that all hit simultaneously.
exactly.
So yeah, I'd like to see Shy play a little bit more. I like his game. I think he has a lot of potential in this league, but it's been the same story for at least the last 3 years where he'd kind of ball out and OKC would tank. And then post All-Star break, he has these mysterious injuries and he doesn't play anymore. So
And let's not forget about Giddy.
Giddy was great last year.
dude, he was getting triple doubles left and right, and then he got hurt, and then again they went into tank mode. But Giddy, Shy, add Chet. I don't know where we stand with Poku. We know Lou Dort he came in as a defensive specialist. We know what that looked like the 2 years ago. And then all of a sudden you could tell another player that totally worked on his game. And I mean, he was scoring, he had some games last year where he was scoring 30 plus. The guy's been in the gym. So yeah, I mean, OKC, like I said, Giddy's another one, man. We just barely got a glimpse of him last year.
Right. Yeah. And we barely even know how he's going to work with Shy when he's playing. So, and then you
Yep.
add Holmgren into that mix. It's worth a shot just to see like how that all works. It's going to be exciting for sure.
Yep.
So we kind of talked about the top five in great detail. Was there anything else in the lottery between 6 and 14 that was especially interesting to you?
Um, I thought the Spurs pick at 9 was interesting. I know we talked about him as a good pick for
Seems like a typical Spurs kind of pick for sure.
yeah, right. But the Spurs took him a little early, but he is very much a Spurs player, so I guess that shouldn't surprise us. The Spurs, they know their culture well, and they know what type of players they want to get, so he does fit their team for sure. The Knicks obviously was pretty comical. I know everybody kind of jumped all over that, but
Jalen Brunson, bro, he's coming to New York apparently.
I I I, I just don't.
You know what makes this frustrating because I really respect what Jalen Brunson has done. I mean, coming out of Nova, no one even thought he would actually be good in the NBA, and he exceeds all expectations.
Yep.
And then he gets to the point where like $100 million contract is possible, and now everyone's going to shit on him because they're like, you're not worth that, even though he exceeded expectations his entire career and proved people wrong. But at the end of the day, like he's not that guy that's worth 100 million. And when you're dealing in a business with luxury tax consequences, you have to be responsible. So I don't know what the Knicks are thinking with that sort of move.
This is, again, we talk about the Kings. This is the Knicks. This is what the Knicks do. They go and get somebody that has a hot season or a hot, couple months. They overpay, and then that guy usually gets his foot off the gas pedal because he's now gotten his paycheck, and he's not that player. And no offense to Brunson, but Brunson isn't $100 million guy. And I don't think that what he's done for the Mavs this season is going to be sustainable for him. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's your elite point guard of the future that's going to take you to the to the championship. And the Knicks, I don't ever get their decision. Do you remember you remember Yogi Ferrell?
Yeah, I know Yogi Ferrell.
So Yogi Ferrell, and I'm not saying Brunson's Yogi Ferrell, but Yogi Ferrell was a very tiny point guard. He went to the Mavs, and it was on a season before I think they had Luka, or maybe they just gotten Luka, and Yogi Ferrell was balling. And he was putting up like 25, 30-point games, and it was for like a 2-3 month window. And the Mavs were like, oh my God, very, very Brunson-esque. And the Mavs paid him. They didn't pay him 25 million a year, but they paid him. I can't remember the contract, but it was decent. And the dude's out of the league. It was just, he got hot. It's like the timing matters. I mean, for Brunson, dude.
I mean, that's what happens when you play with Luka, right? If Luka is on your team and he's setting you up, you're going to improve like no one can believe. But if you get taken out of that situation, then what are you at the end of the day?
I'm not. I mean, even Miami Heat gave Duncan Robinson 90 million for 6 years. I don't even remember what it was, but
there's the first Heat reference on the draft podcast. I love it.
Duncan Robinson did what for them in the playoffs? He wasn't even in the rotation.
Unplayable. Couldn't even make the rotation. Max
Strus took his spot. So I'm not saying Brunson's that guy. I'm just saying money wise that it's a bad move for the Knicks. But Brunson, go get paid, man. You got somebody willing to give you
I mean, Dallas is probably in a position where they have to let him walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. New York would find their future point guard with the draft pick they traded away to clear up cap space. Don't you think? Like, that's probably more likely than you hitting a home run on a free agent signing that you think is super intelligent, that no one else is thinking the same way you are.
And talk about another team that is unable to develop their draft picks. RJ Barrett is the one player that's shown glimpses of it, right? But Obi Toppin, okay, Kevin Knox, okay, quickly, and it looks like he's like a 6-man gets hot bench scorer. Who am I blanking out on?
Maybe Mitchell Robinson, Obi Toppin. Those are decent players.
Yeah, I mean what's his name? Frank
Ntilikina. He's actually on Dallas now.
He's on Dallas, but he was drafted by the Knicks.
Yeah. He was supposed to be the defensive Patrick Beverley type.
Let's go back even further than that. Who was the point guard that everybody was high on? He was a top 5 pick, man.
That the Knicks took? I can't think of it, probably.
Oh, it's gonna bug me, but it'll come to me maybe hopefully during the podcast. But there was another one, and he's not. I don't even think he's in the league anymore. There was another point guard.
The Knicks have no history of proving that they can draft well. So I guess if you're balancing it out, then they're like, okay, we got to splurge in free agency to try to find someone that hits.
I some of these organizations, I just don't understand how these guys. I mean, part of it's ownership, right? I know the Knicks it's Dolan, but what Leon Rose, I think, is the GM for the Knicks, it's oh man, I don't know. You gotta if you can only be bad for so long before any like I mean
Yeah,
any
you're right. You're right. And so what that actually tells me, it seems like maybe Houston's owner is kind of willing to step back and let the front office actually handle decisions like this. Because they
Ooh,
seem to be like constructed in a very like thoughtful way. They're not making like rash decisions to try to get better faster, or you know what I'm saying?
Tillman jury's still out. I mean, I have my opinion. I love Les Alexander, our old owner, and was super sad when he sold the franchise. But uh, Alexander came in right after 2018 when we should have won a ring, and immediately after a lot of bad dominoes fell for us from Morey leaving, the Harden, D'Antoni. I mean, everything just fell apart. And I think there's definitely, I think him probably coming into a new environment as an owner and maybe putting his hands too much into the cookie jar versus letting I think from a leadership standpoint, you always want to hire people smarter than you and put them in their positions and let them do their job. I think because he comes with his business acumen of I'm a restaurant guy and I had the Golden Nugget in Vegas or whatever, and he does his business shows on CNN that he I think he's a hard personality to be around. I mean Morey as an example, right? I love that guy as a GM. He said he's leaving because he's done basically with basketball and he needs to wants to do something different. Like he's leaving basketball. And a week after he leaves and steps away from the Rockets, he signs and goes to the Sixers. So that should
He
tell
wanted the
you,
bag, man. He wanted the
yeah, that
bag.
tell you exactly how much of a PR answer that was and how much probably people in that organization were just kind of like, dude, I don't want to play for this dude.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, these even the people that got drafted, they're probably well versed in the way to have an interview in a way that makes them come across
And,
politically correct. That's like a
and
huge thing.
and one other thing I'll say about Tillman. So I get it. Like, listen, if I was the owner of an NBA team, I'm probably going to hook up my family with some jobs. But like nepotism bothers me. And so, like, even with the draft yesterday, right? Like, Stone, our GM, the chair right next to him is Tillman's son, Patrick. And it's like I said, that stuff where it's like, dude, you want to sprinkle some of your family members within your basketball team and ownership and all that stuff. That's cool, dude. But don't like put him as the VP and don't like, dude, your son doesn't know anything about basketball. Get like besides like watching it on TV or maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe he played in fifth grade. I just feel like there's way more qualified people out there. And I don't know, like I said, nepotism with that type of stuff kind of bugs me, man.
It doesn't seem to have any impact on Houston's draft haul though, because they did pretty well this draft, don't you think?
That's Stone, baby. That's Stone.
Okay, so we know that Houston's a clear winner. I think we could say Detroit's a clear winner. Are there any other teams in this draft that you think got a lot better yesterday?
Teams that got better yesterday. I dude, I like the AJ Griffin to the Hawks move just because I don't even think they thought they would get Griffin at that pick at 16. They still got some things to figure out. Obviously, the John Collins situation, like at this point, that bridge is burned. John Collins knows his name's been out there for every possible trade, so I don't think you can really come back with him and try to, you know, fix
That
that.
that really reminds me of the Kyrie situation. Like, if you guys are having this much drama in the offseason, like, how is that possibly going to work?
Correct, yeah,
Like, there's clearly a lot of bad vibes both ways. Like, there's no way that can possibly work.
yeah, usually when these like pots start getting kind of stirred, like you said, it's like it's kind of hard to stop it. So,
For
well,
sure.
John Collins, and then the other thing too is like I'm a little like confused by the Hawks because the Hawks 2 seasons ago get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they got a good stretch and they played really well balanced. I mean, they had a chance to go to the NBA Finals. Obviously, this last playoff they struggled, but now like they're got all these people that they're shopping, and they're still like a relatively young team. Like even Capella's name is dangling out there. So I'm just kind of wondering why they're trying to almost, I mean, obviously Trey's the, backbone of the team right now, but like they're trying to move too many pieces when you guys were already solid and really, really close.
Well, yeah, the Eastern Conference Finals run in 2021 was impressive, especially for that franchise. But I think it's a recognition that that was probably fluky. They beat Philadelphia, who was the 1 seed in a game 7. That was pretty much Ben Simmons like flame out of Philadelphia. So I don't really consider Atlanta to be even close to a top 4 team in the East. They need a lot of work to do, even though they did get to the East Finals 2 years ago. I think Atlanta, as currently constructed, would be lucky to be a top 8 seed.
Fair, fair. I think the biggest thing was just Trey. Like Trey really dropped off, obviously, especially during the playoffs this season. But I mean, we were talking about like, oh, how hey, the Luka and the Trey Young trade not that bad because they're both super, they're all stars. But this season, I think that trade looked a lot more awful.
Yeah, I think it's just they just were not competing on defense, and I think they were feeling themselves a little bit too much after making the East Finals. So then they come into last season and they don't really have like the sense of commitment. They're not as hungry as anymore, and they were like a mediocre team. I
Yeah.
mean, they got destroyed by Miami in the first round. So
Hey
I
Neil,
yo,
I remembered the name for the Knicks. I gotta say
oh
it.
yeah,
Moutier.
oh Emmanuel Mudiay, yeah.
Sorry,
Is he
man.
even in the league anymore? Where the hell is he at?
No, I don't think he's in the league.
All right, man. So we've talked about a lot this draft. Is there any other thing that was interesting to you that you think we should end on before we sign off?
Um, yeah, I mean, just a couple. We saw several people. We talked about it again in the previous podcast, but like, it was interesting to see that, like I said, the tiers, and there was a lot of people that kind of fell, right? Like even the, Jaden Hardy kind of you always feel bad for the last guy that's left in the green room where like, is this guy even going to get drafted? But I'm
That
glad
happened
he
to Aaron Rodgers on the NFL draft, like wildly. It's crazy to think about that.
Yeah. So there was a lot of people that, like I said, I mean, a variance of like 15, 20 picks, you projected at 20 and you're kind of going, what was it? Liddell, I think went to like at 40 or
Good
40.
pick by New Orleans, by the way. I actually really like their draft. Dyson Daniels and
Yes,
EJ Liddell. I think those are two really low risk, high upside picks.
absolutely, man. Pelicans, that's another one we should shout them out too. Definitely a big winner yesterday. Again, Zion comes back. That team is loaded with lots of youth, lots of length. They got defense, shooting, size. An exciting team. If you're a Pelicans fan right now, this upcoming season, gotta be super happy.
100%. Well, Vanig, it's been great talking to you about the draft. I know you're super excited about what the Rockets were able to do today. Please like and subscribe this video. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you soon on the Boozers Basketball Podcast with plenty of free agent and rumor talk. Have a good one, everybody.